Hello. It is the 20th of February, and we are getting toward the end of this class. I hope you've been enjoying learning about managerial economics, a little game theory, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But what I wanted to talk about was the final group project that you guys were doing. And this project, I know I have given a relatively little guidance, and some of that is on purpose. All right. One of the things that we'll talk about is what needs to be in the paper or needs to be in the project. And the key thing is, I can't tell you what needs to be in the project because I haven't done the research on the subject matter like you guys have been doing. All right. So one of the things that you are learning about is you are learning about the industry and the impacts that COVID has had on that industry and how it has structurally changed. Now that you guys have learned this stuff or are in the process of really understanding what's going on, now we go to the stage where you have to find a way to communicate that information. And before you communicate it, you need to synthesize down to figure out, well, what is it of this information that I have that is really interesting and needs to be communicated to the client or to the boss, or in this particular case, the college course and the college course professor or the students. When you are completing this project, view the audience as being students just like you in a managerial economics class. All right. So if this were a live class in person, we'd probably have you guys do a presentation to each other. All right, so each group would come up and do a presentation. Now, this is an online class, and so we're not going to do it with that presentation because whatever results you have, you will be communicating via submission to this class, right? But the audience are students just like you. And so what you need to do is figure out what of your subject matter is important to communicate to the audience, all right? And then figure out the best way to communicate it, all right? Now, subject matter, you've been working on, your particular industry and how COVID has changed the economics of running that business, right? Now, to communicate that, you got a whole bunch of choices, all right? Probably the easiest is to communicate it with a written paper. And then in your written paper, you have time to think through exactly what you need to be communicating. You can organize your thoughts probably better than in other methodologies, right? Okay. But if you choose not to write a paper, you may choose to record a presentation with that material. Okay. You may choose to do a presentation that has a video of you guys doing the presentations. You may choose to do a presentation that doesn't have your pretty smiley faces on it, but just has your voices narrating over the material that you're presenting. Or you could just have a presentation that is completely self-explanatory through words, right, on the charts themselves. Now, Which of those ways that you wish to communicate is completely up to you, and you got to figure out, which one do we want to do? All right. I care that you've done the research, that you've thought through how your industry has significantly changed, right? And possibly how it has significantly changed that it won't ever come back, or that it will have changed forever, right? Again, once you know what it is you want to communicate, which is your subject matter, once you know who the audience is, which are students just like you, right? So if I were to take your material and incorporate it in next semester's class, the audience would be people just like you, right? Then we have to figure out, okay, what is the best way of communicating that? It's up to you. All right. So some of you will be handing in a paper. Some of you may choose to hand in a video. Okay. Now, you guys are going to have questions about, well, how long does this paper have to be? Or how long does this presentation have to be? And my answer is, how in the world do I know? Right? I don't know the research you have done. I don't know your industry. I don't know what needs to be communicated. Okay? You're the one that has to judge that. Do I want you to take 6 pages worth of material and make it into a 24-page document with pages and pages and pages of filler? Hell no. I don't want to read that crap. And you don't want to write it. Right? On the other hand, you need to write it to the extent that you get your message across, right? So how long does this paper have to be? I don't know. Okay? That's one of the things you guys got to figure out. All right? Now, second thing is not necessarily can I use other people's research? Hell yeah. Okay. Just hold on a second. You turn that off. Okay. All right. It's scam calling. I like scam. Keeps in touch with me all the time. All right. Sorry about that interruption. What we were talking about is use of other people's research. Absolutely. Okay. A former boss of mine told me, quote, always feel free to steal with pride. Now, don't steal, give credit. All right. So whichever format you are doing, if you are using somebody else's research or somebody else's numbers, give them credit for it. Okay. It'll keep you from being accused of plagiarism, but more importantly, they'll keep you out of trouble. All right. Equally important, or maybe even more important, is when you give credit to people for the work they have done, it makes your arguments stronger. Okay. Generally, your boss, and in this case, your audience, doesn't really care about how original and smart you are. They want to know the right answers, right? Okay. And if the right answers can be gotten from work that others have done, make sure you don't ignore that work. Incorporate it, right? But give credit for it so you know, so that the recipient of your communications, of your paper or your presentation, knows where that research came from. And oftentimes, the credibility of where that information came from may be greater than your own credibility. And if your credibility is greater, well, the fact that you are featuring it in your paper gives your stamp of approval to that data, right? So bottom line is steal with pride, but don't steal, give credit, all right? So when you're in charge of that, do that. Now, the last question for those of you who are going to write a paper, I often get are, does it need to be an MLA format or does it need to be an APA format? Or you may guess the answer to that in my case. I don't care, right? Just make sure you make it readable, okay? And make it such that, that references get cited, that you're not taking somebody else's work and playing it off and trying to convince the world or convince your professor it was your work, right? Last little thing on plagiarism. It is a lot easier for your professor to find documents that you plagiarized off of than it was for you to find them originally to begin with. So, if my carrot wasn't enough, I'll put the stick in there too, right? You don't want to get kicked out of your MBA program because you plagiarize, right? How do you stop plagiarism? Just make sure you give credit. And we're in good shape, right? Okay, that should be it. When is the due date? The due date of your project is going to be a week from today. So that would be Sunday, the 27th at midnight. So Monday morning when I come in, ideally the papers should be there. All right? Or the presentations, whichever methodology you choose. So I hope that this has cleared up some of the requirements. And I sort of apologize a little bit for having you been in a vacuum a little bit to start this process. But actually, in my philosophical way of looking at things, I think that's actually a benefit, right? Again, in my world, the first thing you got to do is understand your subject matter. Then you got to figure out who the customer is and what their needs are. And then you figure out the ideal way to communicate it. Okay? Well, one last thing. If you have a bunch of information that would be useful for somebody who really wants to dig into the document, but probably is too long or too lengthy, or some people don't actually have a need to know it to understand what you're trying to explain, but that some people would want to understand it, okay? There is a great thing called an appendix. After you write the report, if you're doing a written report, having an appendix attached to it, okay, is super because it says, I'm not expecting you to read everything beyond here, but it's available for you if you are so interested, right? If you put it into the document, you are implicitly stating that your expectation is that your audience member is going to take their time and read it carefully. A lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily fit into that category, but that you want to make available to people, put it into an appendix and just make sure you have a nice table of contents so people can find it pretty quickly. And that would be a case for a written document. And the same thing can kind of been true with a presentation. One thing you could possibly do is put the documents in a file folder, and at the end of the presentation, right, you can find more information at, the site, right? Or something along those lines. All right. Anyways, I hope you have a great week. We're getting toward the end of the class. It is the 20th. I am working on finishing up the grading of your last tests, and hopefully we'll have those up for you shortly. Take care and enjoy the weekend. And that was good luck from Byro. Bye bye.